Oh yeah.
All right. For part 2, you had questions on your quiz, and it depended. The number varied depending on which quiz you had. But of the items brought to Gregor to eat, which of the following does he find inedible? There's two answers I'll take, because the way it gets written in the book is kind of ambiguous and hard to follow.
You're rocking out.
I know. Two answers.
My voice is so bad.
Welcome horns. What kind of cheese does he like? He likes the rotting cheese. So when all the items are getting mentioned, it goes that, and then cheese is brought, which originally he did like, but when it's the fresh cheese, that's the part that he finds inedible. So cheese is kind of a tricky one, because the rotting cheese, the moldy cheese, that stuff he would like. But if you were to give him a slice of cheddar cheese or something like that, he would not like it because it's not all rotted and whatnot. So I'll accept cheese because the rotted cheese he does not like. The one that comes right with it, and this is where it gets hard to understand based on the way the Kafka writes it, would be the raisins and almonds. So if you put raisins and almonds down, that would be one that would also accept as him being inedible. So the half-rotten vegetables, the bones from the evening meal, those things would not be correct. But if you have either raisins and almonds or cheese, you should get credit. So when I pass the quiz back to you, I'll probably wait till Tuesday, assuming Logan's here on Monday to take it. I wait till they'll be done. If you get that one marked wrong and you had raisins and almonds or cheese, make sure you do let me know after class that, hey, you forgot to add the kind of point.
So in the story, it seems just that he only believe that he's a contract, so he all this.
Yeah, and so when it comes to Greg, let's kind of from timeline. Let's look at a couple of things here. And one of these questions was that you had. When Gregor wakes up, what's the timeline in comparison to the events that happened in part 1? So when he wakes up at the beginning of part 2, when is it? Not evening of the next day.
Morning.
It's that night. So when he wakes up and he's got that scar, actually scar would be over here on his left side. When he wakes up and he has that scar, that's the fresh wound from father kicking him in with the newspaper cane and all that kind of stuff. So he wakes up same day. So he initially wakes up. During the same day. However, by the end of part 2, it's no longer that same day. How much time has now elapsed? Which one did you go with?
No, it was 2 months.
2 weeks.
1 week.
By the time you get to the end of part 2, Thomas, it's been 2 months. Now there is the reference. There is reference to the weeks because it is 2 weeks before Mother is the one who finally comes into season because she wants to see her son. So part 2, whereas part 1 you have all these events going on within 1 day. Part 2 is a much longer amount of time. So for Dylan's initial question, so is he a bug or does he think he's a bug or what's going on? We never get that clarity with it. But he certainly, and it sounds weird to say, has adopted the bug lifestyle. He certainly would think that he is a bug at this point. And so, he's trying to crawl up on the ceiling and all that kind of stuff. You could be going from a literal standpoint. I don't care how many times Connor tries. He can try to crawl on the ceiling. It's not going to work. He's going to come falling down. Again, that's kind of part of that whole surrealism stuff that we take. But by the time he is getting pegged with apples and all that stuff, it has been a long time since that initial transformation. So, and then Brian, I'll get to you in a second. Yesterday throughout the question, how would you act if someone in your family or whatnot were feeling that they're a bug? What would you do with your kid or your brother or son, whatever the case? If he's convinced that he's a bug and it's been 2 months, that's a long time to be dealing with these kind of circumstances. Are you a bug?
Why? could hold it if you want. Yeah, the emergency, I'm gonna pee in the trash somewhere.
I would prefer that you not be in the trash.
Okay, cool.
So scared of
Oh, you're gonna
2
recycle
months
them.
is really not
Well, and in some ways, in some ways they are terrified of them or scared of them in the sense that come on, this thing keeps moving. That father is trying to peg him with apples and all that stuff at the very end. In other ways, they don't seem to worry about him quite as much because the Greta's change in her behavior. Smartboard's not liking me right now. There we go. The changes in Greta's behavior ends up being more that she is now the one who is taking care of him. She doesn't seem to be worried about him or disgusted by him the same way that like Mother is when he first kind of comes out. Which you kind of think, well, maybe then he hasn't changed quite into that bug in that literal sense. And again, like if you're waiting for the paragraph, the scene, the sentence when it goes, and yes, Gregor was a bug, and you go there, we know that part never ever takes shape. I would say that he becomes less and less human throughout the course of the book, but does that mean he's actually started to switch, into arms and eyes and all that kind of stuff? Like, what would be things about him that are less normal, less human-like? But all right, so crawling on the walls, changing behavior with that. The food choice, so
I don't think you could do that. If I did, yeah, you could. Yeah, maybe you can.
what used to be his favorite food or favorite drink?
No.
Okay, used to like milk.
Hey,
Now he likes rotting food, moldy cheese. He likes all those things, the bone meal and all that kind of stuff. He basically likes scraps. The things that we would refuse to eat on our plate, that's now the stuff that he would want to eat on his plate. Pardon? Well, and that's the other thing that also gets kind of weird. When we say the title is called The Metamorphosis, what is the dramatic change that we focus on? Bless you. It's going to be Gregor going from being a human being, or at least acting like a human being, to being a bug. There's also other transformations that take place, and part of that would be the treatment of Gregor by sister, the way parents view him, and things like that. Gregor is forget the whole changing into a bug. What makes Gregor kind of a sympathetic character? That you could feel bad for this guy before he switches into a bug and all that kind of stuff. What would we go, ooh, that's a pretty rough situation to be in. Okay, so pretty much isolated, alienated, and what's the main I don't know if you say the main reason, what's one of the reasons why he doesn't get an opportunity to feel connected to people? He's working all the time, and he's working all the time so that he can support his family. And we go, all right, that's a pretty heroic thing for him to do. Yet at the same time, what is a thing that we discover about the family's financial situation that we have going on down here? They are in debt, and that's why he's working. But what does Mr. Samsa let him know? Scroll this up so we can get a little bit more. So Mr. Samsa, father, saved money from the old business. So it has been multiple months, and yes, employment is something that they're going to start to have to do. But what have they, basically Mr. Samsa, been doing to Gregor for all of these years? Making him work while he has money, and he's working because they're in debt. If he has money, you would kind of think, well, wouldn't you want to, and that's not to say you would pay off all of the debt, but yeah, wouldn't you at least want to kind of help? Or if Gregor can't work, if things get a little tight, heaven forbid he take a sick day 1 every 5 years. that he would kind of chip in some money from time to time with it. You could argue then, if he's not letting him, if he's taking Gregor's money, what would be a word that we would use to describe what he's doing to Gregor? He's using him. What else did we say? And similar things, another way of kind of like using people.
Like stealing.
He's stealing from them. We use this to describe diseases more than like people, but if you really want to insult someone, you could also kind of use it for people. That's the word I was thinking of. In a way, Mr. Gregor is being a parasite in that he is living off of his son. What's ironic about father being a parasite? In Gregor's current situation, Gregor is a bug, which leeches, well, so much stink bugs, but leeches, ticks, mosquitoes, all of those things are parasites. They live off of you. They need a host. They need something to kind of provide for them. So in a twisted way, you could argue, while Gregor physically thinks he is a bug, Father has been treating him basically where I am going to live off you, I am going to use you to my own benefit. You could argue that Father is kind of more bug-like in some ways, emotionally, than what Gregor actually would be. Gregor still does have some human qualities because he still has like human thoughts that would be taking place. What's he hope to do for his sister? This was going to be a big-time Christmas present. Send her to the conservatory, the music school. She's a violin player. Yesterday we were talking about what is something that makes you human, deep thoughts, thinking process, thinking things through and whatnot. If Gregor were completely a bug at this point, you wouldn't think he'd be having these thoughts about his sister still. Music is something that we kind of consider to be a human element. Humans like music with emotions and things of that nature. So his hope is to send her to the conservatory. Which would certainly have a significant cost to it, which is a very loving, human action or thought to have. So we have this conflict that's really starting to show up in part 2, where the human qualities are still there, but they're becoming kind of less and less and less. He's changing the food, he's walking on the ceiling, he's hiding underneath his bed, he's putting the bed sheet there so that she doesn't have to see him every time she opens the door to kind of slide the food. These bug qualities are getting greater, the human qualities are still there, but they're kind of starting to go away. The changed vision would go along with those things. How do bugs normally see? They're not really like clear vision because you have more like the antenna, the feelers to kind of sense way through. He looks through his window a good bit. Every time he looks outside, pretty much the weather is rainy, dark, foggy. Still has that dream-like, aspect to it. There's a building that he can see through his window. He can see the hospital. But because it is so foggy or blurry or hazy, he can't see it very well. When we think of a hospital, what ideas come to mind with a hospital? I mean, it could be usually good or bad ones, life or death. Life, health, medicine. As that becomes foggier, blurrier, hazier. He can't see that quite as well. What starts to maybe disappear for him that is not going to be there for him as much as it was before? I can't see the hospital, the life, the health, those things kind of begin to deteriorate. So you get a little bit of a symbolic quality with the building that he can't see, the one that you think would be able to sustain him isn't maybe going to be there. From a pragmatic standpoint, like it'd be one thing if next to the hospital was the morgue, and I can see that crystal clear. Okay, that would be pretty obvious. If your kid has been locked up for a month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, crawling around on the ceiling, eating crappy food, we're taking the furniture out because he doesn't need that stuff anymore. You had an emergency, you're better. Gregor doesn't talk about going outside to go to the bathroom or then, letting him walk through the house to go to the bathroom. Who knows what the living circumstances in that room would be? How big's his bedroom? Small. It's a small, squalid space. Right across the street is the hospital. So they could take him there theoretically at any time, but they prefer to keep him right there and not have to deal with maybe authorities seeing what's going on, not worrying about what they're going to do for their son. So with, the medicine is there, the help is there, but it seems that his human life or health is slipping away, which would have a pretty ominous kind of feel to it. For part 3, they have not shown up yet. The characters that people get most confused with are called the boarders. They're called boarders, they're also called lodgers. In Europe, whether we're talking 100 years ago or we're talking today, it is not uncommon for people to rent their houses out. So they would rent out rooms, Jack is going to live there basically as an apartment, kind of like a boarding house, and then you go to work and you come home. Lodgers show up. Lodgers are going to stay in the house. The lodgers are always dressed nicely. They're always in suit and tie. They have full distinguished beards, all of that kind of stuff. With Oedipus Rex, we talked about the chorus being representative of social values. Think of the lodgers as being representative of social values, and we'll look at that in comparison to Gregor and the family and all that kind of stuff. So lodgers show up. You're reading